Welcome back to Master 79. In this video we are working through ielts speaking part 2 and part 3 on topic 61. Describe a film that made you laugh. You will see the 1 minute of brainstorming first, then a full long turn, and then for part 3 answers with the thinking behind each one. One note on honesty before we start. The Band 9 label reflects my own assessment against the public ielts band descriptors. It is not a certified examiner score. The candidate you are about to hear is called Lynn, and she is invented for teaching purposes. Copy the technique, not the content. Here is the card, reproduced exactly as it was given. You should say what it is / when you watched it, who you watched it with, and explain why it made you laugh. Two things about this card are worth flagging rather than quietly fixing. The card is reproduced word for word, including the number 61 and the / in the first bullet. Nothing has been silently tidied up. It gives 2 bullets where most cue cards give 3. The / packs 2 prompts into 1 line, so treat it as 2 separate points and you still have 4 ideas to cover. The first bullet uses the present tense, what it is. Answer it naturally in whichever tense fits. The card's phrasing is not a trap. The part 3 list is copied exactly as written. Question 1 is broader than an examiner would usually phrase it, so the model answer treats it as an invitation to generalize and then qualify. First, a reminder of how part 2 actually runs. You get the card, then 1 minute to prepare. Paper and a pencil are provided, and you should use them. You then speak for 1 to 2 minutes on your own. The examiner will not interrupt you, so silence is your problem to fill. Cover every bullet, but do not stop there. The final line, the explain line, is where most of the marks live. You will be stopped at 2 minutes. Being stopped mid-sentence is a good sign, not a bad one. Now the minute of preparation. This is the part most candidates waste. Write nouns and verbs, never sentences. You cannot read a paragraph and sound spontaneous at the same time. Spend roughly 15 seconds choosing, 40 seconds noting, and 5 seconds picking your opening sentence. Choose the example that gives you the most to say, not the most impressive one. A film you actually remember beats a famous one. Here are the notes themselves. 15 words, give or take. Notice there is not one full sentence anywhere on the page. Those notes turn into a 6-part shape. Learn the shape once and it works for every describe a thing card you will ever get. Answer the card in sentence 1 what, when, who. Give the background why you were watching it at all. 1 line of plot. 1. It is not a film review. 3 reasons signposted, first, second, third, and most importantly. 1 concrete memory as proof that you really did laugh. Close by answering why again from a different angle. Here is the full long turn. Lynn is speaking now. Watch the structure on the right-hand side as she goes.
I'd like to talk about a comedy called Mr. Bean's Holiday, which I watched at home with my younger brother about 2 years ago on a rainy Sunday afternoon when neither of us had anything better to do. To give you a bit of background, my brother had been revising for his end of term exams for weeks and was completely burnt out, so I suggested we put on something light-hearted. I'd heard people rave about this film for years, but had never got round to watching it, so we streamed it on a laptop with a bowl of popcorn between us. The plot itself is very simple. An accident-prone man wins a trip to the south of France and manages to turn a straightforward journey into total chaos. As for why it made me laugh, there were three things. First, the timing was impeccable. Every gag builds slowly and then lands exactly when you are not expecting it. Second, the humor is almost entirely visual, so you don't need to understand a single word to find it funny, which meant my brother and I were laughing at exactly the same moments. And third, and probably most importantly, the main character never realizes he is causing havoc, and that gap between what he thinks is happening and what is actually happening is what had me in stitches. There's one scene in a seafood restaurant where he tries to get rid of a dish he can't stomach, and I genuinely had tears rolling down my face. My brother laughed so hard he had a coughing fit, which of course made the whole thing even funnier. Looking back though, it wasn't just the film. It was watching it with someone who needed a break as badly as I did, and that's probably why I still think of it as the funniest film I've ever seen.
Those numbers are measured from the audio you just heard, not claimed. Word count, duration, and speaking rate. The long turn ran to 311 words in 1 minute and 53 seconds, which is a speaking rate of about 165 words per minute. That sits comfortably inside the 1 to 2 minute window, and the pace is slow enough to stay clear under pressure. Now the language that did the heavy lifting burnt out, exhausted after a long stretch of effort. Get round to something, finally do the thing you kept delaying, rave about something, praise it enthusiastically to other people, light-hearted, amusing and deliberately not serious, accident-prone, constantly having small disasters. Impeccable timing, perfectly judged delivery of a joke, have someone in stitches, make them laugh uncontrollably, fall flat, fail to get the reaction it was aiming for, diffuse tension, take the heat out of a difficult moment, a coping mechanism, a way of handling stress or difficulty. Part 3. The examiner moves from your experience to the wider topic. Answers get shorter, but the thinking gets deeper. The 4 questions are these. Do people like comedy? Why do people of all ages like cartoons? Why do some people like to make others laugh? Should teachers tell jokes in class? Do people like comedy?
Overwhelmingly, yes. I'd say comedy is one of the few genres with genuinely universal appeal, and I think there are two reasons for that. The first is escapism. Most people work long hours and carry a fair amount of stress, so an hour of something undemanding is a very cheap form of relief. The second is that comedy is social. A joke is far funnier in a group than on your own, which is why stand-up clubs and sitcoms have survived every change in technology. Having said that, taste in comedy is remarkably specific because humor is tied so closely to culture and language. This shows that is a phenomenon in one country can fall completely flat somewhere else.
Why do people of all ages like cartoons?
I think cartoons have such a wide age range for a few overlapping reasons. For younger children, the appeal is obvious: bright colors, exaggerated movement, and simple stories that are easy to follow. For adults, though, there are two other factors. One is nostalgia, because an animated film can take you straight back to your childhood, and that feeling is very hard to get from live action. The other is that writers have become much cleverer about layering their scripts. So the same scene works as slapstick for a 6-year-old and a satire for the parents sitting next to them. On top of that, animation isn't limited by physics or budget, so it can be far more imaginative than anything shot with the camera.
Why do some people like to make others laugh?
There are a few motivations that I think. The most obvious one is social humor is a kind of currency, and someone who can make a room laugh is usually well liked and accepted into a group very quickly. There's also a practical function in that a well-timed joke can diffuse tension in an argument or lighten the mood in a stressful workplace, so people who are good at it become genuinely valuable. And on a more personal level, I suspect a lot of it comes down to validation. Getting a laugh is instant proof that people are paying attention to you, and for performers in particular, that can become almost addictive. It can also be a coping mechanism because joking about a difficult situation makes it feel more manageable.
Should teachers tell jokes in class?
In moderation, absolutely. Concentration spans are limited, and a short burst of humour resets the room and buys the teacher another 20 minutes of attention. It also builds rapport, and students who feel comfortable with a teacher are far more willing to ask questions and admit when they are lost. There is also reasonable evidence that material tied to something funny is easier to recall later. That said, I'd attach two conditions. The joke should be relevant to the lesson rather than a random distraction, and it should never be at a particular student's expense, because what feels like harmless teasing to an adult can be humiliating for a teenager. So yes, but with judgment.
The same four moods are behind all four of those answers. Answer in the first sentence. Everything after that is support. 2 or 3 developed reasons beat 5 undeveloped ones. Add a limit, a contrast or a condition, that is where band 9 separates from band 7. 30 to 60 seconds each. Part 3 is a conversation, not a speech. To recap the whole method, 1 minute of notes in nouns and verbs, not sentences. Sentence 1 answers the card. The explain line carries the marks. Signpost your reasons, then prove one of them with a real memory. In part 3, take a position first, then qualify it. That is topic 61. If this helps, subscribe for the rest of the speaking series and leave the next cue card you want in the comments. Good luck with your test.